Have you ever felt like you've given everything to your family, only to realize that you've slowly lost yourself in the process? Many parents dream of spending their golden years with their children and grandchildren, believing that it will bring them joy and purpose. But what if that very decision is the reason you feel exhausted, unappreciated, or even invisible? In today's video, we explore a surprising truth that 99% of people don't realize about independence and family relationships. Before you make a choice that could reshape the rest of your life, let's explore the hidden dangers and the empowering solutions that can help you regain your happiness. Stick with me until the end, because what you're about to discover may change everything. When Mary Thompson, a 72-year-old widow, packed up her cozy little apartment and moved into her daughter's house, she thought she'd hit the jackpot. The idea of waking up to the laughter of her grandchildren, helping out in the kitchen, and being surrounded by family seemed like a dream come true. After all, isn't that what one hopes for when growing old peacefully? A loving home, warm meals, and the comfort of knowing you'll never be alone. For the first few months, everything went as she'd imagined. Mornings filled with French toast and cartoons, afternoons spent helping little Ethan with school projects, and warm evenings with family dinners and stories by the fire. This is life, Mary thought, as she carefully folded her little socks and tidied up the toys scattered around the living room. But then, everything changed. It wasn't a big change, no big argument, no clear turning point. Just a gradual realization that her days were no longer her own. Occasional babysitting became an unspoken full-time job. Her helping around the house became an expectation. Family outings began to happen without her because, "Mom, someone needs to be home with the kids." The independence she once had, the ability to decide what to do with her time, where to go, who to see, was slipping away faster than she realized. Mary began to feel a strange emptiness, an emptiness she couldn't quite put into words. She was lucky, she told herself. She was needed. She was surrounded by love. But why then did she find herself staring out the window more often, longing for the slow, peaceful mornings she used to enjoy? Why did she miss the freedom to choose how to spend her afternoons, whether it was reading a good book, taking a long walk, or simply sitting in a cafe watching the world go by? Psychologists like Erik Erikson emphasized the importance of autonomy in old age, but Mary felt hers slipping away. She was no longer Mary Thompson. She was simply a grandmother. Her life had become an endless cycle of cooking, cleaning, and childcare, with little room for herself. One Sunday morning, as she stood at the stove making her third Mickey Mouse pancakes of the week, a thought crossed her mind. When was the last time I did something just for myself? And for the first time since moving in, she had no answer. That was the moment Mary knew something had to change. The hidden burden, when grandmother becomes full-time caregiver. At first, Mary Thompson felt like she was living a second youth. Moving in with her daughter Emily seemed like the perfect way to spend her golden years, surrounded by family, feeling useful, and being there for her grandchildren. The mornings were filled with warm hugs and laughter as she helped little Ethan get ready for school. Afternoons were spent preparing home-cooked meals, and evenings were filled with bedtime stories and tiny hands reaching for hers. But what started as a dream slowly turned into an obligation. At first, it was just small favors, helping with homework, watching the kids while Emily ran errands, making dinner a few nights a week. But over time, those small favors became daily responsibilities. Before she knew it, she was folding laundry, running after toddlers, and making grocery lists as if she were the manager of a busy household. She barely had time to enjoy her morning coffee before someone needed something. And then, one evening, while preparing dinner, she overheard Emily on the phone. "Mom is a blessing. I don't know what we'd do without her." Mary smiled at first, feeling a surge of pride, but then a wave of exhaustion hit her. Was that all she was now? A necessity? A built-in babysitter? The feeling gnawed at her, but she pushed it aside. After all, she loved her grandchildren. She loved helping her family. But as the weeks passed, she noticed something unsettling. She had no time for herself anymore. The book club she once attended? Forgotten. Her morning walks in the park? Replaced with preparing lunchboxes. The art class she had always wanted to take? There was simply no time. Psychologists refer to this phenomenon as grandmother slavery syndrome, a silent burden where older women, out of love and duty, take on the role of full-time caregivers, often at the cost of their own well-being. Studies show that grandmothers in these roles experience higher rates of stress, depression, and even physical exhaustion. The worst part, many don't even realize it's happening until it's too late. Mary started to feel it, the weight of expectation. Her body ached more than usual, and she longed for just one day where she wasn't needed. But every time she even considered bringing it up, guilt stopped her. How could she complain? She had everything she ever wanted, didn't she? Evening, as she sat in the dimly lit kitchen, stirring a cup of chamomile tea, a realization hit her. She had lost herself. She had spent her entire life raising children, taking care of her husband, and now, in her 70s, she was still doing the same. Only now, there was no retirement, no break, no time for Mary. As much as she loved her family, she couldn't shake the question that lingered in the back of her mind. At what point does love turn into sacrifice? And is that sacrifice truly necessary? That night, for the first time in a long while, Mary allowed herself to imagine something different. A life where she still loved and supported her family, but also reclaimed her independence. And for the first time in months, she felt a flicker of hope. When love becomes an invisible cage, the struggle for independence. It was a simple comment, but it hit Mary Thompson like a slap in the face. "Mom, how many times have I told you? The kids don't like onions. Why do you keep putting them in everything?" Her daughter Emily barely looked up as she spoke, her voice laced with frustration. Mary, standing in the kitchen, gripping the wooden spoon in her hand, felt a sudden lump form in her throat. She had spent the entire afternoon preparing dinner, peeling, chopping, stirring, only to be met with irritation. Not a thank you, not a smile, just another correction, another reminder that she was no longer in charge. And suddenly, she saw it. The home she had moved into with so much excitement now felt like a place where she tiptoed around, afraid to overstep, afraid to disappoint. She had given up her own space, her own routine, her own life, to be closer to family. But in doing so, she had lost something she never thought she would, her own voice. At first, she told herself she was imagining it, but the signs were everywhere. Suggestions turned into orders. Her way of doing things, whether folding laundry or seasoning food, was met with mild corrections. Slowly, the things that once brought her joy, like gardening or painting, fell to the side as she found herself in a routine she never planned for. Psychologists like Erik Erikson have long spoken about the importance of autonomy in old age. Losing independence doesn't just affect day-to-day living, it affects who we are. Studies show that when older adults lose control over their own lives, they experience higher rates of depression, anxiety, and even cognitive decline. Mary could feel it creeping in, the frustration, the exhaustion, the quiet resentment she was too ashamed to admit. She had moved in to feel closer to family, but now she felt more like an afterthought, a built-in helper rather than a respected elder. One night, after an especially long day, she found herself crying silently in her room. How did I get here? She wondered. She loved her family more than anything, but she also knew one painful truth. Love should never feel like a burden. Something had to change. And as she sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the moon outside her window, she whispered a promise to herself. It's time to take my life back. A friend's unexpected advice that changed everything. Mary Thompson had always been the strong one, the devoted mother, the loving grandmother, the dependable rock of the family. But lately, she felt more like a shadow of herself, trapped in a routine she never planned for. The days blurred together, filled with endless chores, cooking meals to everyone's liking, and chasing after grandchildren who, while she adored them, seemed to demand every ounce of her energy. One afternoon, as she stood in the kitchen folding tiny socks fresh from the dryer, the doorbell rang. It was Carol, her oldest friend, holding a bag of homemade cookies and wearing her usual mischievous smile. "Mary, you look exhausted. When was the last time you did something for yourself?" Mary hesitated before answering. What a silly question, she thought. Isn't taking care of my family enough? But deep down, she knew Carol had hit a nerve. They sat at the kitchen table, sipping coffee, as Mary finally let the words spill out. Her fatigue, her guilt, the nagging feeling that she had lost herself somewhere between diaper changes and bedtime stories. Carol listened, nodding, and when Mary finally fell silent, she reached for her hand. "I've been there, Mary, and I'm telling you now, you don't have to live like this." Mary's eyes widened. "But what about my family? They need me." Carol smiled. "Of course they do, but they also need to see you happy, not just useful. When was the last time you made a decision for yourself?" That question lingered in Mary's mind long after Carol left. When had she last done something just for her? She had always believed that putting her family first was the right thing, but what if taking care of herself was part of taking care of them? The next morning, with newfound determination, Mary made a change. It was small at first, a walk alone in the park, breathing in the crisp air without worrying about getting back in time for someone else's needs. Then, a bigger step, signing up for the painting class she had always dreamed of, but never pursued. As the days passed, Mary noticed something surprising. She was laughing more, sleeping better, and feeling alive again. But the biggest shock, her family didn't resent her newfound independence. They respected it. One evening, as she put the final touches on her latest painting, her daughter Emily walked in and smiled. "Mom, I haven't seen you this happy in years." Mary realized something powerful that day. Reclaiming her independence wasn't selfish. It was necessary. And in doing so, she hadn't distanced herself from her family. She had brought them closer than ever. The paradox of love. How distance strengthened Mary's family. For years, Mary Thompson believed that being physically close to her children and grandchildren was the key to a strong, loving family. She had moved in with her daughter Emily after her husband passed away, thinking it would bring them closer. At first, it felt like a dream, mornings filled with laughter, the joy of cooking meals for everyone and feeling useful every day. But slowly, something changed. Instead of feeling cherished, Mary felt like she was fading into the background. What had once been a loving home now felt like a place where she was always needed but never seen. The endless responsibilities of childcare, household tasks, and trying to meet everyone's expectations drained her energy. She wasn't Mary anymore. She was just Grandma. Then, one evening, she had an unexpected realization while sitting alone on the porch. What if being physically close to her family was actually creating distance? The next morning, Mary made the bravest decision of her life. She sat Emily down and said, "Sweetheart, I think it's time for me to get my own place." Emily was shocked. "Mom, are you unhappy here?" Mary hesitated. "I love you all, but I need space to be myself again." At first, the idea seemed impossible. Wouldn't moving out weaken their bond? But as weeks passed, something remarkable happened. Instead of growing apart, Mary and her family grew closer. Her visits became special events filled with joy rather than daily obligations. Her grandchildren no longer saw her as the tired caretaker, but as an exciting, independent woman with new stories to share. Emily, seeing her mother thriving, felt a new sense of respect and admiration for her. A study from the University of Michigan confirms that older adults who maintain independence have stronger family relationships and higher life satisfaction. Mary was now living proof of this. One Sunday afternoon, as her grandchildren gathered around her to hear about her latest painting class, Mary smiled. She had feared that moving away would mean losing them. Instead, it had deepened their love. Sometimes the strongest relationships aren't built on constant proximity, but on the freedom to grow, both together and apart. At first, Mary and many others were reluctant to make the change because of family responsibilities, and the transition was never easy, but it was life-changing. Instead of feeling bound by responsibility, Mary felt free. And something unexpected happened. Her relationship with her family improved. The time she spent with them became more meaningful. When she visited, it was out of love, not obligation. Her grandchildren now see her as a fun, energetic grandmother with stories to tell and adventures to share. Mary's journey taught her the importance of balance. Family love is beautiful, but so is independence. By prioritizing her own happiness, she not only improved her own life, she taught her family a profound lesson. Loving someone does not mean losing yourself. True happiness comes when we create a life that honors both our love for others and our need for self-fulfillment. When Mary first moved into her own apartment after living with her daughter, she worried she had made the wrong decision. Would she feel lonely? Would her family think she was abandoning them? But deep down, she knew she needed her independence back. What she didn't expect was how much this change would strengthen her relationship with her family instead of weakening it. At first, adjusting to her new life was difficult. The silence in her apartment felt strange compared to the lively chaos of her daughter's home. She found herself reaching for the phone, tempted to check in constantly. But then, something surprising happened. She started rediscovering parts of herself that she had forgotten. She took long morning walks, started reading books she had set aside for years, and even signed up for a local painting class. As days turned into weeks, she realized she wasn't just filling time. She was thriving. For the first time in years, she was doing things for herself, and the best part, her relationship with her family was improving too. Instead of seeing her every day, her grandchildren now looked forward to their visits. When they came over, they wanted to hear about her latest painting or the funny stories from her new friends at the senior center. Her daughter, Emily, also started to see her in a new light, not just as mom or grandma, but as a woman with her own life, interests, and dreams. One day during a family dinner, Emily admitted, "Mom, I was so afraid of you moving out. But now, I see how happy you are, and it's inspiring. It's made me think about what I want for myself too." That moment confirmed everything Mary had hoped for. By choosing to take care of herself, she was teaching her daughter and grandchildren a valuable lesson. Independence isn't about pushing people away, but about making the time spent together even more meaningful. Studies show that older adults who maintain their independence report higher levels of happiness, better mental health, and stronger family relationships. Mary had discovered this truth firsthand. By setting boundaries and embracing her own life, she had created a balance that allowed her to enjoy her family without feeling overwhelmed or taken for granted. In the end, Mary learned that love doesn't mean sacrificing yourself completely. It means knowing when to give and when to take a step back. Sometimes the best way to be there for others is to make sure you're also there for yourself. And for Mary, that choice turned out to be the best decision she had ever made. One of the most valuable lessons we can learn from Mary's story is that maintaining independence is not about distancing ourselves from family, but about enhancing the quality of our relationships. As we grow older, it's easy to feel that our role is to always be available, to help, to give, to sacrifice. But true love and connection are not built on sacrifice alone. They thrive when there is a balance between caring for others and caring for ourselves. Too often, older adults find themselves in roles where they give so much that they forget who they are outside of being parents or grandparents. Mary's journey teaches us that stepping back and prioritizing our own well-being is not selfish, it is necessary. By pursuing personal interests, engaging in social activities, and embracing independence, we set an example for younger generations. We show them that aging is not about fading away, but about continuing to grow, to learn, and to live fully. Furthermore, studies confirm that maintaining a sense of autonomy leads to greater happiness, better health, and stronger family bonds. When we take care of ourselves, we bring more energy, wisdom, and joy into our interactions with loved ones. So let Mary's experience be a reminder. Your life is still yours to live. Prioritize yourself, nurture your passions, and trust that by doing so, you will strengthen, not weaken, the relationships that matter most. Life is too short to live in fear. Get out of your comfort zone. Do things that scare you from time to time. This is how we grow and learn, as the greats have said. Anything you can do, or dream you can do, just start it. Boldness has genius and magic in it. So go ahead. Be bold. Be yourself. The greatest gift you can give your family is your own happiness. If this message resonates with you, please take a moment to reflect on how you can reclaim your independence and embrace this exciting phase of life. If you found this discussion valuable, please consider supporting this channel. Like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss an opportunity to learn and grow. Your support helps us continue to create inspiring content